Welcome to Kabbalah Cafe, where the number 6-7 have a much deeper meaning. I'm kidding. So today is boss mode. Today is boss mode. Now, you know what boss mode is? There's, you're playing a video game, and there's always like the boss. Is that what boss mode is? I don't know. But boss mode is basically where you're in control. You got this. Today we talk about the inner life of a tzadik, what it looks like, what it feels like, and more importantly, how even if you don't consider yourself a tzadik full on, you can experience a little bit of tzadik in your life and in your divine service. So that's the plan. Good morning. Now we know it's going to be a good class. Don't forget breakfast over there. Yeah. Is Peter?
He's coming.
Okay, good. All right. Good. You made it.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. All right, here we go. Let's jump in. The first thing, so there's a few steps to today's class. I want to just walk everybody through the process and make sure that we're all on the same page. Number one, I want to define the term tzadik because I feel like, and if you don't mind, on the way out, just hit the door stopper so that way we got a little bit more soundproofing. All right, and by the way, this is coming from a guy who's taught probably hundreds of classes with a kid, certainly Zoom, COVID time, with a kid on my lap. So I'm totally used to it, but I know there are some people, wow, this is pretty good. It's almost like they built this for a preschool in different classrooms. All right, so here we go. Dr. Maxey, you remember with the Riva on my lap? Yeah, of course. All right, and others? Okay, so here we go. Let's jump in. First of all, let's define tzaddik. Now, tzaddik is the literal meaning or usage of the word tzaddik would mean righteous person. However, Kabbalah teaches that that's not exactly the extent of what a tzaddik is. And again, I want to be very clear here. The goal of today's class is to understand what it means to live in spiritual boss mode, which means that you are above the fray, right? There's the fray, there's the grappling, there's the struggling, there's the wrestling, but you are above that. So what does that look like? How does that feel? And how do we get there? That's going to be, again, the purpose of today's class. So let's begin with the definition of the word tzaddik. Tzaddik, again, typically means righteous person, but we need to go deeper the way Kabbalah explains what a tzaddik is. And to do this, we need to introduce the concept that I think at this point, most, if not all of you are familiar with, which is the idea of the fact that we each possess two distinct souls inside. Now, what are these two souls? These souls are called the nefesh halakit and nefesh habahamit. The godly soul and the animal soul. Now, what's the godly soul? It's the animal soul. If you will, you might call it the higher self or the lower self. It's a little different than in cartoons where they had the angel on the one shoulder and the devil with the pitchfork on the other shoulder, right? It's a little bit different than that because the angel versus the devil, which is not necessarily a Jewish concept, but that is the notion that there's a good part of us and a bad part of us. This is a little bit more subtle. Godly soul and animal soul is not good versus bad. It's really selfless versus selfish. And to be selfish doesn't mean to be evil. It just means that you want to eat because you're hungry. That's not evil. But it is self-oriented. It is related to self and not related to purpose or something higher. So again, the division that we're creating between these two souls is there's a part of us that is very altruistic, a part of us that's very giving, a part of us that's not really self-centered and oriented. It's not about us. It's not about survival. It's not about me. It's about what I'm here for. So it's not about me waking up in the morning and thinking, okay, what do I need and what do I want and how do I get it? Which I would say is how many people have been trained by Western society to think like, okay, what's in my best interest? What do I need and how do I get it? But rather, what am I needed for? So again, if you wanted to really distill it into one line, it's the shift of perspective between what do I need versus what am I needed for? I was granted life today. What is the tachlit? What is the purpose of that? Not what do I want to get out of it? Not what do I want to achieve? Not what do I want to get or consume or take or enjoy? But what am I here for? That is the core distinction between the animal soul and the godly soul. The animal soul will always think along the lines of, what do I need? Or what do I want? And I'll tell you what I want. What I really, really want. No, okay, that's to quote the old song. Wasn't that a song? Yeah. There's what we want. That's the animal soul. The animal soul says, We're hungry, let's eat. The animal soul says we're threatened, let's put up our defenses. Let's knock down the other so that, we're safe. The animal soul is always in self-preservation mode and self-advancement mode. It's always about self and self-aggrandizement. It's always about ego. It's ego-driven. Now, that's not evil. An animal or a human being consuming something it's not evil, but it's self-oriented, which means that it's not higher either. It's nothing higher. The godly soul is all about purpose. It's all about what am I here for? What is my reason for being? Why was I created in the first place? Why did I wake up this morning? What's the purpose? To consume? To take? That can't be it. That's way too mundane. What am I giving today? What is my purpose? Whether it's serving God or being there for others, in other words, whether it's in our relationship with our Creator or a relationship with our fellow human being, it's always about an outward focus. What can I do for you today? How can I be of service? So that's the godly soul. Most people live in a fierce battle between animal and godly soul. Inner animal soul and inner godly soul. Most of us live locked in that battle. And in fact, the Kabbalistic text, including the book of Tanya, the Bible of Chabad Hasidic philosophy, says that it's almost like, not almost, it says it's like one city and two kings are vying for control. And at any moment, there's a battle. At every moment, there's a battle between these two personas, these two personalities, these two drives and desires. Are we going to think, speak, or behave in a way that bespeaks our animal soul, which is about self? Or will we think, speak, or act in a way that bespeaks our godly soul, which means about a higher purpose, for a higher purpose? At every moment, there is that challenge. Most of us, again, are locked into that battle, and therefore, most of us are a little bit some and some. A little bit for me, a little bit for God. A little bit for me, a little bit for the other person. That's how we kind of compromise, right? I'm going to enjoy, and then you'll enjoy, right? I'm going to take, and then I'll give some to God, right? I'm going to have some fun, and then I'll do something a little bit holy. That's how we usually compromise. Most people create a compromise. I'm not going to live totally for a higher purpose. That's crazy. What kind of life is that, right? It's like the KGB officer. It's like a bit of a dark KGB joke, is that even a thing? I don't know. Who pounds on someone's door and says, guy opens up and says, is Yanko Goldstein here? I says, oh, sorry, does Yanko Goldstein live here? I says, no. He says, what's your name? He says, Yanko Goldstein. He says, I thought you said you don't live here. He says, you call this living? So most of us, such a Jewish joke, you call this living? Anyway, most of us have this kind of, we don't necessarily keep score on an app, but we kind of keep score. Little for me, little for you, little for me, little for you. And the truth is, we're trained to do this almost in our relationships. I mean, think about it in the terms of relationships. Most of us would say, on some level, without, again, maybe keeping score in an overt sense, that, okay, so, if there's questions about what we should, whatever it is, sometimes we'll go by me, sometimes by you, right? We'll kind of vacillate back and forth. A little for me, a little for you, a little for me, a little for you. And we kind of find a compromise in the middle. It's like driving. Based on the road, your wheel balance and other factors that are way beyond my pay grade, and Natan, this is your cue to jump in, cars will pull one way or the other. So what's happening? So whenever you drive, you're kind of, don't drive like this. It's going to make everybody a little
alignment issues.
Alignment issues, yeah. So but you're always you're never just driving. You're always correcting and then recorrecting. And it's almost like that in relationships where we correct and recorrect. It's like a little for me, a little for you, a little for me, a little for you. And it's kind of, that's how it works. And again, most of us in our relationship with God, relationship with our purpose are in the same boat. A little bit of animal soul, a little bit of godly soul. There is a persona known as the tzadik. No, this is not the, now I'm forgetting not the Loch Ness monster, but maybe as rare on some level. Who is the tzaddik? The tzaddik is someone who lives life completely by the godly soul. No animal soul. The animal soul, in fact, it says in the mystical text that the tzaddik either doesn't have an animal soul that's kicking and screaming, or it's so subdued that so either it's objectively not there anymore somehow, or it's been so subdued and suppressed in a way that it no longer airs its voice and its desire, which means that the tzaddik is living completely by the godly soul, mission oriented, mission focused, laser driven, mission focused. What am I here to do? What's my purpose? Anything outside of that, unnecessary. That's a very tall order for most human beings to achieve. In fact, most human beings will never attain that dimension, will never become a tzaddik on that level. Now, many of us can do more good than bad. I would hope that all of us are going to aim to do more good than bad. So if you're talking about a 51% good versus 49% bad, if we're talking about it like a balance scale, so are we more on the side of good versus bad, and therefore tzaddik in the sense that we're righteous as opposed to wicked? Absolutely. But the pure definition of tzaddik, as described in Kabbalah, wherein a person no longer feels the drive, the internal drive of the animal soul is only driven internally by their godly soul, very few individuals very few individuals have that experience in their lives. Very, very few. And you'll notice them, if you ever encounter them, by people who you can tell are not living an earthly existence. Meaning, yes, they are living an earthly existence in the sense that they're souls and bodies like everyone, but they're not about the physical experience. They're not about consumption. They're not about physical, or they're not about money. They're not about those things. It's about something higher and deeper and grander than self. And so, yeah, you might need resources in order to survive, food to survive, or resources in order to get the stuff done that you need done, but it's not about that. Okay. Now, that's one introduction. Make sense so far? Tzaddik versus, yeah.
I've been taking time,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit different. And we don't have to talk about it now, but I would speak to you about it later.
Sure.
It's not just that you're doing good, because some people do good automatically. You see someone drowning and jump in. You don't think I'm doing it for God. But to be a tzaddik in Tanya, I'm getting it correctly, which is very confusing. You have to be thinking about God while you're doing good.
Right. Meaning that you're complete. Yes, that is correct. Meaning you're so suffused.
The other is impulse to say
right.
something good.
Right. Meaning you're so suffused with purpose that that's your entire mindset. Is that how can I be there for someone else or for something higher than self, i.e. God?
But just being good isn't enough.
Right. Correct. It's a very high bar. It's an extremely high. Hey, good to see you. Good morning. Right? It's a very high bar. It's the Tanya's tzaddik is like, wow, is that even possible? Is anyone on that level? Okay.
But we're not talking about that. Right?
Oh, no. So here's the thing. I want to explain what the tzaddik of Tanya is.
Oh, okay.
And then hold on. The ultimate takeaway from today's class is, even if we can't be that 24/7, we can create moments of isolation where, Natan, breakfast. Make sure this week. You got to feed the animal soul. So how to find moments of tzaddik in our lives. Meaning, predicate, and this is where we're going to today. I'm kind of setting out the intention. It's not necessarily an all or nothing proposition. It's not necessarily either you're a tzaddik or you're not a tzaddik. That's how you could walk away thinking when you study Kabbalah. It's like, well, either I am or I'm not, and then if I'm not, then whatever. Then okay, let me not waste my time trying to be. But the real takeaway of today's class is going to be, you might not define yourself as a tzaddik in all areas, but there are some areas in which you can be a tzaddik, and that can be transformational. So that's where we're going to today.
In terms of Tanya, or
Yes, we'll talk about that.
okay.
Yes.
So when you said that most people are in the phase of regular struggle between the soul and the godly soul, I don't know, but I think that most people, and maybe I'm speaking for myself and people that I know, are at the phase that they're not even aware at a certain point of any struggle anymore. Because you are set in your ways, you do things the way you do. It's not like before I lift this cup of coffee, I intentionally need to stop and think, just pick it up and drink, because you are conditioned to doing the things that you do all the time. So I would say that most of us are not even in the place that we realize that there is a struggle anymore. I mean, some of the mitzvahs that I do, I don't think about them either. When I wake up in the morning and say, Modeh or when my wrapped feeling, I'm not necessarily thinking, oh, great, I'm doing a mitzvah now, it's really amazing, I'm doing something good, or if I'm giving tzedakah, I'm thinking about the fact that I'm actually doing good.
Yeah.
I'm just doing it because that's what I'm accustomed to do at that point. Where is the point that you're saying that?
Good.
Where do you actually realize that you're in a struggle? I mean, you struggle on the main thing, like if God forbid you run across something that is major, you're going to have that struggle, but in our day-to-day life.
Yeah. So Dad, just in case it didn't come through on the camera, Dad is asking a really good question, which is many of us might be so conditioned either with the animal soul or the godly soul or that kind of compromise that we strike, that we're not even thinking about the fact that we are locked in a struggle. Even as we are locked in that struggle, we're not even aware of it. We're just either doing something for our body or doing something for our soul, meaning higher soul, doing something for self, doing something for a higher purpose without much thought, without much, deeper thought. That's your point. And I think that's correct. And I think that's one of the major ideas of Kabbalah is, in modern psychological terms, you might call this becoming metacognitive. So we're always thinking. There's always like a narrative in our minds, and there's always some stuff going on. Like we're operating, right? We are operators throughout the day, but behind the operation of what we're doing, there are all of these thoughts that are happening and all of these reasonings that are happening kind of behind the scenes, and we're not always aware of it. Becoming metacognitive means that we're becoming aware of our own thoughts. We're becoming aware of our own drives or desires or rationales behind what we're doing. Most of us go about most of our day without that metacognition. We're not aware of what we're thinking. We're just autopiloting, right? We're just operating and we're not slow. So I think one of the major features of Kabbalah is to attempt to instill with us the need to slow down, because it's in that space of slowing down and thinking about, okay, what am I doing and why am I doing this? That disruption and change can happen. If it's totally on autopilot, then we're not going to change. We don't really have a chance or any hope to change the outcome or the result. It's just going to be the same, right? Same input, same output, and because it's not being thought about. But it might be the same input, might be the same scenario that's been a trigger. But if I can become a little bit metacognitive, I can become aware of, okay, wait, what is that? What just happened? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? Right? How do I maybe interject another idea in the middle? Then I can hope for at least a different outcome. Otherwise, you're right, it's the same thing. So if I can become a little bit more aware of my day and my thought throughout the day. And so when I pick up the cup of coffee, or in my case, a cup of tea, right? So I become a little bit more, I take a little bit more time. And even if it's not that much time, but I'm just aware a little bit of what's happening internally, I might be able to have a different experience when I drink it. Or even within the mitzvah, I'm doing something for God. At least I should become aware of that and recognize that and feel that. And how long would that take? It might not take more than a moment, but it's that moment that Kabbalah seeks to buy us that time, a little bit of time and space within which to operate. And I think your question is a really important question, and it's more than a question. It's really a call. It's really a call to action. It's like, okay, we know that this is a challenge. We know that the autopiloting of our lives, whether higher or lower, is a reality. So how do we adjust that? And really the answer is simple. The answer is less autopilot, more awareness, more conscious awareness. Okay, so that's introduction number one. Introduction number one is about tzadik versus struggler. Now, one more point about that actually before we continue is that the vast majority of people were intentionally created by God to be in the struggler box. How do we know this? The proof is in the pudding. I mean, like, how do we know this? Because that's the way it is. And God doesn't make mistakes. There are the Talmud, the great book of Jewish law and ethics, 1500, 1600 years ago, already wrote that God saw that there would be very few tzaddikim, and so he kind of staggered them throughout the generations to make sure that there's a few, maybe one or two in every generation, but that there shouldn't like clump together too much, but to kind of allocate them into every era, every generation. And we see this indeed. How many billions of people are there today? 8 billion people. How many people would be perhaps categorized as a tzaddik? I don't know. I have no idea. There is a Jewish tradition that says that there are always, at every time, 36
Do they have to be Jewish?
hidden tzaddikim.
So it's like less than 0.2%.
I mean,
right?
hidden 36 people is no.
Yeah.
That's hidden tzaddik. That's people that are tzaddik that we don't know about. How many
so they
more?
don't have to be Jewish.
I don't know. I don't work here with that. No, but the idea is that there are individuals who are. Hold on. I think did I freeze? Why am I stuck there? Look at that. That's frozen.
Your camera went off.
Yes, you are
my
frozen.
Camera's not even looking at you.
Let me see if I can. Well, how do we fix that? That's weird. Anyway, to answer your question, while I'm frozen, the real me is talking. The digital me is stuck in space. Very weird. What's happening here? I feel like this is a sci-fi situation.
Because if they have to be Jewish, it cuts down a lot of the population.
It does cut down.
tzaddikim.
It does cut out a lot of
options.
A lot of options. I would say this: the notion of a tzaddik is so incredible. One sec. Oh, is it the camera?
I think it is a camera.
No, I think the camera is responding to an existential need. Anyway, all right. I don't know what's happening. Point is that what is the point? The point is that this concept of hidden tzaddikim, it's kind of like if you know about it, then they can't be hidden. So who is it? I don't know. We have a label on it, but it's about living a life that's dedicated to something greater than self, in a way that's completely thinking about something that is beyond my own personal interest. Who that is and how that is. But the overarching point is that it's extremely rare to find someone who is a tzaddik. Whether they're the hidden tzaddik or whether they're not so hidden, it's extremely rare. Now, let's move on to the second point. Now, the next point is a bit of a psychological point, and I want to use a story in the Torah that I've used in previous classes in different ways to illustrate this concept. So here we go. There's a story of Noah. Noah, of course, is the guy who built the ark and saved his family and saved the animals when the great flood went down. Noah built the ark, as our tradition tells us, for 120 years. It took him a while. I always joke, he was Jewish. I know you're handy. Peter was on the case. That thing would be built in like 12 months or less. Anyway, he built it for 120 years. And he rescued mankind, then he rescued civilization, and it's all that good stuff. And he gets off the ark, and he's completely traumatized because he sees the devastation. And he turns to God, in the Midrashic story, he turns to God and says, how could you have allowed this to happen? Like, how could you have done this? And God turns to Noah and says, how could you have allowed this? Where were you? I told you this was going to happen. You didn't step up. You didn't protest. You didn't challenge me. You didn't go and rally the troops. You did nothing. All you did was build your ark and save yourself. It's like, reminds me of a story Somebody once came to the Rebbe, maybe it was somebody else, I don't know, after the Holocaust and said, where was God during the Holocaust? And the response was, well, I don't know where God was, but where was man during the Holocaust? Easy to blame God, right? But like where no one stepped in. Like how is that okay?
I heard another joke. I don't want to interject, but I was actually at Shabbos dinner 2 weeks ago, and this gentleman, I forget what his name was, but he said, Holocaust survivor, very well-known author. He wrote, very religious guy, and he's like, he wrote in his books about he died in the Holocaust, gets into heaven, and says, I found the Holocaust funny when he's speaking to God, and God's like, how could you say that? And God's like, you should have been. I mean, he tells God, you should have been there.
Yeah, you should have been right, exactly. So, and it's dark, it's painful. It's a dark, painful humor.
Yeah.
The point is that Noah gets off the ark and he challenges God, and God challenges him back. And he says, where were you? Where were you to save him? Clearly Noah is traumatized because what he does next, which the Torah tells us, the Torah doesn't say everything that happened in his life after that, but it highlights one primary incident. And that is he planted a vineyard, he drank wine, and he got drunk, and he took off his clothes in his tent. That's what it says. Now, major question is, why do we need to know this? Why is that relevant? Like the fact that this guy couldn't deal with, if we put him on the couch, couldn't deal with what he saw, the trauma, so he just had to numb himself with alcohol. Okay, so it's unfortunate, but that's what happens. But why do we need to know that? Is it a cautionary tale? I don't know that there's one answer to that question, but I will tell you the way the Torah describes what happened next is very telling. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Cham, and Yafet. So Cham sees his father. And the Torah says, the story goes that he sees his father kind of debased and disgraced like that, and he runs out of the tent, and he tells his brothers, and I'm paraphrasing, guys, Dad's drunk and naked in the tent. And what do? The 2 brothers, Shem and Yafet, they walk in respectfully with a garment or a cloth, whatever it is. They turn their heads to the side, they cover him, and they walk out. And it says they turned their head backward, they turned their heads, around, and they didn't see their father's nakedness. That's what it says. So Kabbalah has a whole analysis of this story, and it's really powerful, and it's really psychological. It's very powerful. And it basically goes like this. What does it mean that they turned their heads to the side or around and they didn't see their father's nakedness? Of course, if they turned their heads, they didn't see anything. So why does the Torah have to say both? They turned their heads and they didn't see. It's implicit. It seems redundant. And the answer that's given is not only did they turn their heads physically around, but they didn't see it, meaning they weren't consumed by that thought. How many times does something happen and we get consumed by it, we get stuck by it, we become fixated by it? Kabbalah says that's a sign that you're stuck in that problem. You might see a problem in someone else, but if you become fixated on the problem and you start telling others, look at the problem, look at the problem. Why are you telling others? Why did Cham point out to the other brothers about that? Why didn't he cover his father? Without getting into that specific story in that area of challenge, whatever that was, the point is that if we become fixated, if we see a problem, a failure, a challenge in someone else, and instead of helping, we become fixated on the problem, you know what that means? That we're stuck in the same problem. Because if we weren't, we would help. Why don't we help? Because we can't. Why can't we help? Because we've never solved that within ourselves. This is Kabbalah psychology here. You with me on this? I'll say it one more time. The Baal Shem, in different words, the Baal Shem Tov teaches that every soul is a mirror to your soul. So when you see a flaw in someone else, it means that you have that flaw. That's a teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, to which everyone says, What do you mean? Why can't I just see a flaw in someone else and it have nothing to do with me? Who says it's a mirror to my soul? By the way, the Baal Shem Tov says, thank God other people are around. Because then you could see your own flaw. Imagine if no one else was around. And you look at yourself with the rose-tinted glasses, rose-colored glasses. You'll never see your flaws. You'll never work on yourself. You'll never have self-improvement. And you'll always remain the same you were. There's never any self-growth. So thank God there are others around that we can see flaws and then hopefully have the seichel, the insight to realize, that's really me, and then work on ourselves. So it turns out we should thank the other one for having that flaw, because that's the only way we would have noticed it within ourselves. But everyone asks and pushes back against this teaching. One second. You're telling me that if I see a flaw in someone else, it automatically means that it's a flaw in me? Who says? Maybe it's just in them. Why does it have to be me? Why do I have to personalize everything? The answer is, one second. What do you see? Do you see a flaw, or do you see an opportunity to help? Those are two different things. If you see an opportunity to help, then you're not stuck in it. If you see a flaw and that's all you see, then you're stuck in it. Why do you see the flaw? Why do I say, whoa, can you believe what this guy did? It's unbelievable. Why are you doing that? Why aren't you helping? Why aren't you fixing? Why aren't you solving? Why are you
fanning the flames?
Fanning the flames. Thank you for that. We should do Pictionary together, or whatever that is. Whatever. Hand motion Pictionary. Charade. Thank you very much. Everyone's finishing my sentences now. Like, I don't know, my brain is. Why is it that we can't fix it? That we can't help? Why are we stuck in it? You know why we're stuck in it? Because we never solved it within ourselves. So if you never healed it within yourself, you can't heal it within someone. How can you heal what you never healed yourself? So if you're stuck with someone else's problem, it means that you're stuck with that same problem within yourself. So, okay, you with me on this? That's the second point. But let's develop this a drop further. Someone who has healed that within themselves, or has never had that struggle within themselves, will take the approach of, wow, that's really terrible, or that's really sad, or that's really unfortunate. Let me lend a blanket. Let me help. It reminds me of the sin of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, where the Torah tells us, because this idea of clothes, no clothes, comes up with the first sin described in the Torah. What does the Torah say? The Torah says that Adam and Eve were created, plopped in the Garden of Eden in paradise. And it says that God told them, of all the trees in the garden you may eat, except for this one tree, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that you should not eat, but everything else is available and freely available to eat. And then the Torah says, unprompted, no one asked about the fashion situation. The Torah says, by the way, Adam and Eve, they weren't wearing clothes and they weren't ashamed. Then what happens? Then the serpent comes over to Eve and says, hey, that looks really good. Why don't you give it a shot? She says, I can't have it. He says, God just doesn't want you to become like him. Knowers of good and evil. Eat it. Try it. You'll like it. She eats it. She gives to Adam. He eats it. The next thing you know, the Torah says, their eyes were opened. Their eyes were open. It doesn't mean literally, but it means they became more aware, and they realized that they were naked and they were ashamed. Clearly, there's this association of eating the forbidden fruit and the shame and this idea of wearing clothes. What's going on? And by the way, there are some commentaries that explain that forbidden fruit was actually grapes and wine. I know pop culture says apple. That's not any of the opinions in the Talmud. Either a pomegranate or a vine, a grapevine, or there's some other opinions on it. But not one opinion in Jewish literature says an apple. Where does an apple come from? You have to ask the artist who wrote, who depicted it as an apple. Maybe they had an issue with the apple business, and they had an axe to grind. I'm kidding. There's a word in Latin which can mean evil, and it also has etymologically related to the word apple. So maybe there's a theory that it's kind of like got crossed over from there. But I digress. Here's the big idea. Hey, Ramon. Good to see you. Yes. Glad you made it through. Okay, so here's the big idea. When you're coming from a pure place, and I'm not going to define what that means, but when you're coming, at least yet, when you're coming from a place of no baggage, no vice, no issues, no complication, then there's an innocence and a naivete, and there's a purity. They were like children. They were not wearing clothes. They weren't ashamed. What's to be ashamed of? The moment they ate from the forbidden fruit, and we've talked about this in another context, where is the birth of shame? The birth of shame is the dissonance, the gap between where you are and where you feel like you ought to be, where you know you ought to be. And that gap, the gulf between where you are and where you ought to be, that causes an inherent shame, a sense of dis-ease with who I am, where I am, and where I ought to be. And by the way, some people mask that by saying, like, I'm not going to be ashamed, and that's it. I'm just going to accept the reality. This is who I am. Meaning, there's one of two things that can happen. Either you feel that the tension between where you are and where you know you ought to be, or you just drop the where I ought to be and say, well, this is where I am, and that's it. Nothing higher, nothing greater, nothing deeper. So long as Adam and Eve did not violate God's command, there was nothing to be ashamed of. Their souls were not out of balance with their purpose, or their lives were not out of sync with their mandate, their mission. The moment they violated the only mitzvah, essentially, or the primary command that they were given, God says, everything you can eat, but not that, and they ate that, is a moment that existentially, inherently, essentially, intrinsically and innately, they feel disconnected from their purpose. They had a purpose and they failed that. And now there's a gap between where they are and where they know they should be. And that is profoundly shameful insight. It's not about anyone else judging. Adam himself is literally hiding behind a bush when God says, where are you? He's like, I'm hiding. God says, why are you hiding? Because I don't have any clothes. And God says, who told you that? And no one had to tell him that. Inherently, he wanted to hide himself. That hiding is shame. I have to hide. There's a Yiddish expression, "Af a cup von a ganef." When you have a thief, they're always paranoid that everyone's looking at them. They're the only ones that know what happened. But meanwhile, everyone's after them. The paranoia. It's this internal shame, manifest maybe as paranoia, but it's this internal shame is internal. It's not induced by in this the way I'm defining it. I'm not giving the only definition of shame or a clinical definition of shame. This is a Kabbalistic definition of shame, is the notion it's completely internal, it's completely self-driven in the sense that it's stemming from a person's sense that I have fallen short, or I am short of where I need to be, of where I ought to be, of where I know I should be, and I know I could be. And living with that it's hard. It's hard. So again, a lot of people, what we do is we say, okay, let me drop that what I should. So let me drop the aspirational me and let me embrace the real me. So like, I'm feeling the tension, the shame. I don't want to live with it. So let me drop anything higher. So if in the context of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden, and please understand what I'm saying here, if I kill God, then I don't feel shame anymore. Correct? If God's out of the picture, therefore there's no commandment not to eat from the forbidden fruit. Therefore, what I did is fine. Who says that this tree is worse than any other tree? So if I kill God, if I get rid of God, no shame. Done. You don't think this has happened throughout history? Where people in societies have said, let's get rid of God to alleviate any sense of shame. I don't know. I don't know who it is or what it is. I think this is a story that is as prevalent as sin itself, as that. Well, and you don't think anyone has ever said in a relationship when being perhaps less than faithful to theirs, said, well, it's not so bad because of X, Y, and Z. It's always in order to manage that sense of shame or guilt or whatever it is. But shame is even deeper than guilt. What's the point? The point is that's one approach. One approach is you get rid of the problem. You get rid of, there's two anchor points. One anchor point is what I should or should not be doing. And the other one is what I've actually done. So if I get rid of this anchor point, then great. Then there's no shame. If I maintain it, then there's tension, internal tension that manifests as shame. And that creates all sorts of problems. So who is the one that goes through life without any shame? The one who never the one who never acted out of sync with their higher self, with their higher purpose. Correct? If Adam and Eve had never sinned, would there be anything to be ashamed of? No. So let's plug this back in to the other things that I've talked about today. A tzadik, in this context, would feel no shame. I don't mean that a tzadik doesn't wear clothes. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that on a deep internal spiritual level, there's no shame that the tzaddik feels because the tzaddik is always aligned with higher self. The majority of people that vacillate between these two are always on some level dealing with that dissonance between what I've done, what I'm actually doing, and what I know I should be doing. And again, people manage that in different ways. Some it manifests as shame and internal guilt, internal shame and anxiety and whatever it is. Some people say, well, then let me just cut off that other anchor. Anchor be gone. This is who I am. Let me embrace the fact that I am nothing more than an animal. And yeah, animals do animalistic things. That's it. Godly soul, whatever. And even the good that I do will be self-serving. That way there's no guilt, there's no shame. So I'll do good for someone else with the expectation that they'll do good for me. That's not a tzaddik. That's a sophisticated animal. The sophisticated animal knows that if I do good things, it'll come back to me with also good things. So that's not altruistic. That's an animal. You with me on this? You don't think an animal in the jungle realizes that if it helps out, it might be also helped at some point? Sure it does. Doesn't make it a tzaddik. That makes it a smart animal. It's a dumb animal who says that, oh, I'm always going to punch you because I want to punch. I mean, that's a foolish animal. Because at some point, you're going to get punched by someone bigger than you. That's not a good idea. I don't know if animals punch, just for the record. I'm not suggesting any violence to animals, etc. So just all disclaimers, right? I'm just saying, it's a foolish animal who says, let me bully my way around my whole life, because at some point, something is going to come to roost. What is it? The chickens come home to roost. And in this context, I don't know if I used that correctly. That's not good. So the sophisticated animal says, oh, the smart, the clever, the animal with a little seichel, little intelligence says, oh, let me do some good for the other. I'll look good. I'll feel good. Someone will do good back for me. It's a win-win. What's the problem? All animal soul. The animal soul life is a life that's fraught with internal turmoil. Always thinking, always feeling, am I falling short? Am I not falling short? The tzaddik, easy breezy. Easy breezy. It's not even a term, right? So easy. No shame, no guilt, no muck, no fuss. Very simple, very pure. Just doing good things. Just going around, doing what I need to be doing, what I should be doing, what my purpose tells me to do. That's it. Where's the shame? There's no shame. There's no guilt. There's no negative emotions. Easy breezy. What I'm suggesting is that if we all want to feel better, just be a tzaddik. I'm kidding. It's not so easy. As we discussed previously in today's session. Here's the point. When you and I encounter food or money or anything of the physical universe, you know how complicated that is? Part of us is, there's a purpose here. Godly soul. Part of us is like, I really want it. And part of us is, okay, so I'll just have it now. I'm not going to be thinking because who's always metacognitive? We're not always thinking about the stuff that we're doing. So we just eat and then we might feel shame, even if we can't place that emotion. And we're not going to run to a therapist because of this level of shame. But we might feel internally a sense of, I've fallen short. We might find the frustration as we live our years in life, and maybe we'll call it a midlife crisis, or maybe we'll call it something else. But maybe we'll come to the point where we'll say to ourselves, what was this all about? Decades spent pursuing consumerism, and then what? For what end? The clock is ticking. You can't take it with you. Live and have fun. And then, like, what's the end game? Shouldn't I be living for some sort of higher purpose or some sort of cause or some sort of benefit to others? And the sense of the gulf between where I am and where I think maybe I should be, that causes profound pain on some level that manifests in different ways. Sometimes it manifests as a catalyst for change. Sometimes it manifests itself as a sports car. I don't know. It can sometimes all the above. But it can manifest itself in different ways. I need to completely revamp my life. But sometimes it means leading in to the animal side. Sometimes it means leaning into the godly side. Sometimes it means living somewhere in the middle and still being tortured on that level. So what's the point of all this? The last few sessions that we've had together, we spoke about the challenge and the struggle of elevating the world around us. Because like when we encounter, especially this breakfast, you guys saw that. Did you grab? You had, okay. Yeah. This is like high level stuff. This is, we got eggs like 7 ways. I've never seen, I don't even know what they're doing with the eggs. Right? There's like shakshuka and who knows. Right? It's good breakfast. There's bagels, there's lox, there's cream cheese, and that, on a normal day, that would be, oh, wow, lavish. This is like, no one's even looking at the bagels because you've got all this other stuff. There's hash browns. There's sauteed onions, caramelized, right? Look at this. Who does this? We do this. And it becomes a profound challenge. What's the challenge? The challenge is, are we going to eat completely with an animal, like as an animal, with an animal soul mindset? For our body, for our delight, for our physical pleasure? Or are we going to eat for a higher purpose? And that becomes a profound struggle. And even when we catch ourselves, no, wait. Let me recite a blessing before, and let me think about that fact that the energy of this food is going to power me, empower my day, empower me to do good things, and I'm going to elevate this experience. Even when that happens, it's not clean. It's always with a struggle. And so we said, that's why it's like subterfuge. That's why it's what's the word that we used? Maybe subterfuge. It's why it's fraught with, it's like espionage. It's like you're going in behind enemy lines, you're going into the realm of the food, and you're finding the spark, and you're extracting the energy, you're pretending to enjoy it. Yeah. Pretending to enjoy it. That's generous. We did enjoy it. We did enjoy wearing the clothing of Esav. That's the point. We enjoyed it. But we're still hoping to extract something positive on the way out. Yeah.
Well, would you say that some of the most important figures in Jewish history, such as King David, would not be considered tzadik?
That's a good question. I think like this. I think that it's hard to know the true story either way. So therefore, personally, I always focus on myself. I always think it's better to focus on self. Because whether that guy was or wasn't, I don't know. They have to figure that out. But I know for myself, like we're on this, in my journey, like where am I holding?
Yes.
Like what's my goal? Like, because the Talmud says that whoever thinks King David sinned is mistaken. I don't know. Listen, I'm not saying yay or nay. I'm just saying I don't know. I wasn't there. So no, I'm just saying it's for me. Like for the Kabbalah is always about self-empowerment. Not in a selfish way, but self-empowerment. Like, how can I integrate these teachings in my daily life? So whether or not, whatever, let the whole figure that out. I want to figure out myself. Like Rabbi Zoshev Anipol, a great Hasidic master once said, he was crying as he was coming near to the end, and they said, "Why are you crying? You were as wise as Solomon, and as loving as Aaron, and as a leader like Moses." And he said, "Great. When I come to heaven, they're not going to say, how did you measure up to Moses, Aaron, or Solomon? They're going to say, were you the best Reb Zusha you could be?" And so that's, I think, it's all about the best we can be. My point is that we've been describing this experience up until now about why does Jacob take the blessings from his father by dressing up like his brother? And we said, well, it's a template for all of us, because we're all trying to ultimately extract the sparks and elevate the world around us. And whether it's in business, the two examples that we gave were work and eating, which is, I don't know, even a few hundred years ago or whatever this was written. I mean, it's still prevalent today. The main physical activities that we do are eating. Of the main physical activities are eating and working. What's the point? We've been saying that we go in like spies. We go in like donning the clothes of Esau, but we're going in to extract the sparks and elevate them. And again, as I just mentioned a moment ago, like halavai. Like if only we were so clear as to the mission that every time we ate and drank, it was always clear that this is what it is and that's not what it is. And it's not about the food, and it's always about the spark inside, always about the purpose inside, and elevating the experience. The point is, and this is really what we're going to do in the next chapter, chapter 8 in our text, is that the reason why it's so complicated is because we are stuck in an animal space on some level. And so therefore, when we encounter the food or the money or the opportunity that presents itself that might be a little less than kosher, when that happens, we get excited. Part of us gets excited. And so then it becomes a battle of managing that excitement with what we know to be purpose. What does that sound like? Typical struggle between animal soul and godly soul. And that's why our prayers are, we pray in the morning to get ourselves focused and centered. But then when we get into work and we get into the grind, or we get in front of that plate, it becomes, we forget exactly what we were thinking about. And while we were praying, we try to remember and we try to have that, motivate us to still ultimately make the right choice in the moment and elevate the experience, as opposed to being sunk by the experience, and it becomes completely hedonistic and completely materialistic. And that's our hope. Contrast that with the way a tzadik approaches food. We have not spoken about that until now. You know how a tzadik approaches food? No struggle. It's clear from the beginning. This is a tool for deriving energy to serve God. Everything in a tzaddik's world is purely about purpose, including the food, including the money, including whatever, the resources. Everything is about the higher purpose. There's no struggle. You don't need to wear the garments of Esau. All of that is a symptom of being stuck. You're stuck, so now you're playing spy. You're playing like now you're a spy because you're stuck. So the best you could do is at least on the other end, at the end, flip it for the good. But there are some people, tzaddikim, who don't struggle, and therefore from the beginning it's all pure and it's all perfect. And there's no struggle and there's no tension and there's no... And as we'll see, we don't have time to read this inside. Do we? Hold on. Let me see. I know. I kind of wanted to end it. Let's do it. We're doing it. Okay, let's go. That was weird. Okay, take and pass. Okay, we're going to do this very quickly. Take and pass, chapter 8. All for the sake of heaven. Okay, let's go. All for the sake of heaven. This is going to be chapter 8. Please open up your text to chapter 8. What page is it? Who's got it first?
72.
Okay, you all get an extra piece of, an extra caramelized onion, if they still exist. I'm kidding. I don't know. Okay, here we go. I'm sharing my screen. And let's do this quick. We're only going to do the first part. That's Tzadik, chapter 8. There is a way of accomplishing the refinement without deception, without donning the clothes of Esau, without this, let me call it, let's see if we can come up with it, without espionage cosplay. Does that work? I don't even know what cosplay is, right? This is without espionage cosplay. Like you can just go in and be a boss. Indicated in the verse that tzaddik eats to satisfy his soul. The food satisfies his soul. Look at that, not his body. Or her. Meaning that even while he eats, he's not comparable to Esau, heaven forbid, since he does not relate to the physical at all. Meaning that tzaddik is someone pure of the struggle between body and soul, between animal and godly soul, and therefore, tzaddik ochel l'sova nafsho, from the beginning, the food is there for the soul. You don't have to wear the garments, you don't have to go in. All of that is indicative of the struggle. Your struggle, you're battling, you're wrestling, so you're trying to extract it, but you're really battling with yourself. See, we always thought up until now that the battle is with the food, because the nachash hakadmoni, the primordial serpent, is holding on to the spark. Chapter 8 reveals that all of that was because you were struggling inside. You were the chum, struggling with your father, rolling around without... You were the one that were dealing with that same issue. Who am I? The question doesn't begin, what's that food? Is it physical or spiritual? The question always begins with, who am I? Am I physical or spiritual? My existential struggle internally manifests itself in how I see this thing. Do I see it as delicious food or energy that can serve a spiritual purpose? That my vision and perception of the outside world is shaped by my vision and perception of my inside world. So the struggle that I have with the food, the struggle that I have with the work, the struggle that I have with the gelt, all of that struggle is really my internal struggle with how I define myself. Who's the one that has no struggle? The tzaddik. The tzaddik doesn't struggle with their self-identity. Who am I? I'm a divine warrior. That's it. That's it. So guess what? The tzaddik also doesn't struggle with the food. It's not like there's a outside, there's a body of the food, there's a soul of food. How do I get in and get it out? Who said there's a body? Oh, you said you're a body. So you said it's a body. Then you said, no, I'm not really a body. So you're like, that's not really a body. So that's how that goes. You start off saying, I'm a body. Then the food is also a body. Then you're like, wait. I'm not just a body, I'm a soul. The food is not just a body, it's a soul. That's already a complicated relationship. And that's how most of us deal with everything physical. It is physical. It's not so physical. I'm going to get stuck by it. I won't get stuck by it. Let me extract the spark and let me go home. The tzaddik never struggled with it, because the tzaddik never struggled with self-identity either. The tzaddik is always about godly soul. So when it looks at food, it's also like, this is not physical. This is soul fuel. That's my new restaurant, Soul Fuel. Kidding. Right? This is soul fuel. This is not physical. This is spiritual. Let's continue inside for another 2 paragraphs, and then we'll close it out for today. This differs from the aforementioned refinement by way of cunning, in which eating involves engaging the physical, since he can, and look at this. This parentheses is a little, we can't focus on this today. Maybe next week we'll focus on this. Since he can relate to the food and becomes his flesh and blood, his body will later require cleansing. That refers to the afterlife. This is implicit in what is written in Tanya chapter 8, unless one had never derived enjoyment from this world in his life, as was the case with Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Otherwise, you need what's called chibut hakever, which is what is chibut hakever? Chibut hakever means purgatory of the grave. We'll talk about that maybe next week. Should we talk about that? Is it too dark to talk about next week? Chibut hakever. All right. Fine, maybe next week. However, at tzaddik, so let's keep that parenthesis aside because we can't get into that right now. However, a tzaddik eats to satisfy his godly soul, just as in Shabbat, when food does not make a person coarse and earthly, since it is incorporated within godliness. And again, we'll focus on that next week as well. We'll focus on okay, so that's it. Next week, afterlife, the journey of the afterlife and the cleansing process to get to heaven, according to Kabbalah, and then also eating on Shabbat. We'll talk about that. And indeed, if you look at the next little caption there, it says Shabbat. So it gets into how food on Shabbat differs from food of the ordinary week. But I want to end like this. Today we learned perhaps the most important thing of all, and that is that it's self-perception that necessarily affects how we view that which is outside of us. How we view ourselves will always color how we view others or other things. And so if we view ourselves as Bodies with souls will view the food as a body with a soul, and then it becomes complicated because then it's like, ooh, am I going to get sunk by the temptation of the food, or am I going to recognize that it's really about something deeper, and then I'm going to struggle with it, but I'll try my best, and then hopefully at the end I'll overcome. But a tzaddik who doesn't look at self as a body, looks at self as a soul, a higher warrior, divine warrior, that tzaddik from the beginning always recognizes that the stuff outside themselves is also the same thing, is also pure and also holy and also divine. And therefore you don't need to put on the garments of Esav and deal with Esav and deal with the body of it and then in a cunning way flip it for the good. It doesn't work with that. Tzaddik can go in and eat in a way that's pure and unencumbered. And I promised at the beginning that I would relate this to all of us, because you might say, well, I'm not a tzaddik and therefore this doesn't apply. So I want to end with this. It says in the books of Kabbalah that everyone can be a tzaddik in specific areas. Think about it this way, without getting as deep as you mentioned before. But let's even on a more basic level. If the difference between a tzaddik and a non-tzaddik is that the non-tzaddik struggles and the tzaddik does not struggle with that thing, I mean, how many areas in life do you not struggle with? That maybe other people struggle with, but you don't struggle with. I mean, think of, I don't want to get dark, but think of something like something horrible that some people do, right? And you would never do that. In that area, you're a tzaddik. Or think of maybe in more subtle ways, how you've never done wrong or even wanted to do wrong in a certain area, or you've always been aligned in a certain area. And think about how in that area I'm a tzaddik. And then think about the following. Can I move the needle on one more area in my life where I can go from struggling with it to maybe mastering it? And that's what we call spiritual boss mode, where you're no longer struggling with that thing. Is it possible to move our entirety from one space to the other and become a tzaddik all in? That might be ambitious. But can you take one small area and say, in this area, I'm going to set myself up to no longer struggle with it. I'm going to set myself up to position myself correct, to see the purpose, to find the purpose, and to relate to it in a purposeful way, as opposed to a way that's less than. And I think we can, but it requires mindfulness. It requires work and attentiveness. It requires a little siyata d'shmaya, a little help from heaven along the way as well. Scott.
So to flip that, people got these areas where it comes naturally.
Yeah.
But people also have this one area where it really doesn't. Would you not
100%.
say that is part of your purpose?
So I would say like this. Excellent question. And I'm gonna amp up your question a little bit more. I think there are areas in which everyone has an area in which they don't struggle at all. In that area, you're a tzaddik. I talked about moving the needle from struggle to not struggle and become a tzaddik in one small area, become a tzaddik in that area, which I think is doable. But you're asking, I think, if I were to amp up your question the other way, there's certain areas in which we typically lose the battle. Can we move that at least to that middle spot where sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, right? Because that's also progress. Progress might be an area, a challenge in which we consistently fail and succumb to our lower self, to maybe move it to where it's a little bit more of a toss-up.
And that would be part of your life purpose.
That would be a major part of life purpose. But to move the area in which I'm failing to a place in which I'm not just succeeding sometimes, but always succeeding, and it's not even a struggle, that might be too broad of a flip. Meaning we have three areas. There's the area in which there's no struggle for the good. There's areas in which it's purposeful and meaningful and good, and there's no negative struggle. There's areas in which we more or less are not succeeding, and we almost don't feel guilty about it anymore. Meaning, like we're all in on that. And then there's areas in which we're vast. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So yeah, progress on every level is good. Status quo is never good. Kabbalah always pushes us further. Like, what's the next thing? Kabbalah is not like let's map out the infinite light. This is all about let's go. How do we shift an area of struggle into an area of mastery, boss mode? How do we shift an area of failure into an area of struggle? And then maybe eventually mastery. It's all about, but we're never going to do this. Going back to self-awareness, because of that, what you said before is so important. Many people go about their days, their lives, not even thinking about any of this. That's why Kabbalah is so important. That's why it's important, I feel, to start the week, Sunday morning off with a little Kabbalah, because you set your intention for the week. This week is going to be a week in which I'm thinking about these higher things. I'm thinking about purpose. I'm thinking about my life, about what my work is going to be, what my work in the area of light, not just in the area of commerce, is going to be. In short, what we did today, we talked about Yisrael versus Yaakov, Israel versus Jacob. Yaakov is the struggler. Israel is the boss, is the master. He gets the name when he defeats the angel. Yisrael, Sar Kel. You're a master. You're a boss mode. Every one of us has these different dimensions in our lives. There's the areas in which we struggle, the areas in which we've mastered. And the goal is to keep on shifting up from struggle to mastery, without losing the drive to take on the battle each and every day in the trenches. You know, like it's NFL playoffs, right? That's what they say. Rumor. You see, like, it's very flashy when the quarterback, drops back and then throws a bomb touchdown down the sideline to a wide receiver that, breaks open. But, the game is usually won and lost in the trenches, in those humans that are just pounding each other for 1 inch of leverage. And in life, it's the same thing. The areas in which, we throw a bomb and like we do the mitzvah and it's amazing, it's great. But it's the day-to-day struggle that really defines who we are. May we succeed in the trenches, push back a little bit more, and gain the spiritual ground that we need. And ultimately, it's about our growth and about us achieving the reason for why we're here. Thank you for joining me this morning for Kabbalah Cafe. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you next week. We got an important class next week. All right. Make sense? Made sense? Before everyone goes, I just want to mention I'm in talks with a rabbi from Kentucky, Louisville. I'm not sure. Louisville. Who is known as the Bourbon Rabbi. No. This is not a joke. This is legit. Known as the Bourbon Rabbi. This guy, Rabbi Chaim Litvin, I don't know if he makes his own bourbon, but he's an expert in kosher bourbon. So he's going to be in town this coming Shabbat. I'm working on putting together Saturday night a little bit of a little bit of a kosher bourbon experience. We'll speak about the bourbon making, how to make a kosher. Maybe we'll have some samples for tasting. So stay tuned for updates on I just found out he's going to be in town. He reached out. He texted me last night. So we're going to, please God, put together something for this coming Saturday night. Stay tuned. It should be a lot of fun. And I guess l'chaim. I don't know. Cheers. Thank you. This Wednesday. Thank you. I don't know how I missed that. Not to be missed. We have this brand new course called Captivating Cases in Rabbinic Responsa. 1,000 years of some of the most fascinating questions that people like you and I asked the leading rabbis of the time when questions came up, such as, Rabbi, I just prepared this chicken. It has no heart. Is it kosher? It's the Tin Man of chickens. Did the Tin Man have no heart?
Correct. That's what he was seeking.
That's what he was seeking. Yeah. So I don't know if it was seeking. Rabbi, I'm going to be an astronaut. NASA recruited me to be an astronaut in outer space where you orbit, I don't know, very often. When do I keep Shabbat? Or Rabbi, is lab-grown meat kosher? Or Rabbi, can someone buy up all the seats in the synagogue and then resell them for a higher price?
Or rent them.
Or rent them, yeah. A little bit of scalping. What, you think Taylor Swift only works for Taylor Swift? What, can't do that for high holiday seating?
Is he going back into the shul or not?
No, he's gonna profit off it. He bought half the seats in the synagogue. Now he's gonna make money. Anyway, the course examines the most interesting cases. We look at the precedent. We try to analyze it. Everyone gets a chance to give their input. And we also learn a lot about what Jewish communities were going through at the time. So there's like this cool historical exploration as we go through the cases. Anyway, that's all coming up Wednesday. 12 o'clock or 7:30 p.m. Your choice. Same class. In person or on Zoom. Check it out at the Torah Center, atl.org/JLI. And I think that's it. All the news is fit to print.
Ari, what's the time span for that?
Oh, it's the first questions are like from the 1100s all the way to 2000. All the way to today, can AI answer Jewish legal questions? Can you trust AI to? No, you cannot. But whoops! I've spoken too soon. But can you? AI will actually make up sources.
They will.
Will make up.
With a judge on Thursday.
It will say, "Oh yeah, Code of Jewish Law says X, Y, and Z," and you're like, "No, it doesn't." See, the AI typically is trained to be accommodating.
Try to make the best case.
It'll give you what you want to hear.
It's like this sounds the best. So.
Yeah, so it's
Actually,
also a
it gives
link.
you links, and when you press on the link, it's nothing to do with what they say.
I'm like, tell
Sometimes
me.
it won't give you the side.
I'm like, is there a story of the
Even
Baal?
when they give you the link, you press on it, and you
Oh, Dad,
can
sometimes
find what they're talking about.
I'll be like, I want a story for this concept. So, is there a story of the Baal Shem Tov about X, Y, and Z? It'll make up a story out of thin air.
Wow.
It's a language model. It's not a fact model. I don't think it's trained to be like.
This is why attorneys have been debarred for.
Yeah. Anyway,
So it's
Dr. Maxey, good to see you.
It's going through a phase.
Ellen, good to see you. Monica and Jackie, good to see you guys. Shavua Tov. Have a great week.
Shavua Tov.